Today, I'm going to be breaking down the slowest throwing player at every MLB position, excluding pitchers, since that's its own list entirely. First of all, I'm going to require a minimum of at least 300 throws at the position that any player is being considered for, or at least 20 stolen base attempts for catchers. In my opinion, less than this would allow utility players to be qualified for multiple positions, which would skew the overall rankings, as well as complicate things in terms of comparing max velocities, which isn't separated position by position on Baseball Savant, which I'll be pulling from largely for this video. With that being said, let's hop right into it, starting with catcher, with our selection here being Jose Trevino. The Yankees backstop only managed to unleash throws at a major league worst 72.8 miles per hour on steal attempts, leading to the fourth worst catcher caught stealings above average at -5 and tied for the third worst catcher stealing runs at -3. This is, of course, despite the fact that he only managed to tally 52 stolen base attempts overall. It's obvious when considering these numbers that Trevino's arm is horrible in every regard, especially considering his pop time of 2.07 is also second worst in all of baseball, but this doesn't mean in any way that he's a bad fielding catcher overall. In fact, he's actually one of the best in Major League Baseball, with his fielding run value in the 89th percentile in 2024 at 9. This is because, despite all of the issues with his arm, he's one of the best blocking catchers in all of baseball, as well as one of the best framing. First base is probably the most boring position to investigate on this list since almost nobody really tries to air it out over there, but since we are looking at every position, let's just get it over with. With the two-way tie here in overall average velocity shared by Dominic Smith and Paul Goldschmidt at 67.7 miles per hour, though I am going to end up giving this dubious designation to Smith, whose max of just 71.4 miles per hour was a full 4 slower than Goldie's. As I said before, arm strength for first baseman is nearly a non-factor, which is evidenced by the fact that Smith was actually an above-average fielding first baseman, with a +2 OAA and 1 fielding run value. At second base, we have a major slam dunk, with Ozzie Albies finishing over 2.5 miles an hour slower than the next closest at just 72.5 miles per hour, with a major league low max of 76.8. This was all part of a pretty poor year overall for Albies, with his third worst fielding run value this season at -1 and an overall career low 1.3 FWAR through at least 90 games played. Here's to hoping he can bounce back with what feels like half of the Atlanta Braves team in 2025. Third base is up now with our first real truly productive fielder to have the weakest arm at a position, as Alex Bregman's league worst 80.7 mile per hour average velo and 82.5 max didn't stop him on the way to tallying an 81st percentile fielding run value at 5 and 91st percentile outs above average at 6. He's long been one of the slowest throwing third basemen in baseball, but yet here we are with 6 straight seasons with him having average to above average fielding performance, with 2024 actually being his best overall showing yet. While teams are certainly going to value him for his upper level hitting potential over this offseason, his abilities with the glove should certainly help with his value as well. We have our second straight elite fielder who seems to be completely unencumbered by a weak arm now in Nick Ahmed. Now, this one was a little bit harder since there were actually 3 guys in front of Nick who had a slower max than his 84.4, but none that got within 1.5 miles an hour of his average speed of 78.8. I think his 7 fielding run value last year, tallied in just 554 innings in the field, should further go to prove that having a weak arm, even at a position like shortstop that requires some of the longest throws in the infield, doesn't mean you have to be a poor fielder overall. Ahmed has actually managed to post the 3rd highest career FRV in StatCast history at a mark of 89, just 13 behind both Kevin Kiermaier and Francisco Lindor. Left field brings us back into the territory of relatively easy choices, as Randy Arozarena was a full 2.5 miles per hour behind the next slowest throwing left fielder at 82.0 miles per hour. His max speed of 92.6 was a little better, only ranking 3rd worst, but this still isn't enough to save him from a designation that might at least partially be able to explain how he could throw up a -8 fielding run value in 2024, with a full -2 of this just coming from his arm alone. In a somewhat under the radar way, this guy's actually been one of the worst fielders in Major League Baseball over the past 2 seasons, and with his hitting production falling off a cliff last year, one has to wonder how much longer he'll continue to get starting reps at the Major League level if he can't find some way to break out of this prolonged funk. Center field brings with it our first selection of a guy who didn't have the absolute slowest average velocity at his position, as Cedric Mullins was actually 0.1 miles per hour faster than Kyle Isabel in this regard, at a mark of 84.2 to 84.1. However, his max velocity was nearly 2 miles an hour slower than Isabel, with Mullins having an MLB worst 90.0 miles per hour, which to me essentially breaks what might as well be a tie in average velo. Like Bregman before, this hasn't inhibited Mullins in regard to his overall productivity in the field, as since he made his debut in 2018, he's actually managed to be worth +26 fielding runs, a borderline elite total, especially considering he plays one of the hardest positions on the field up the middle. We now come to our last spot of the video in right field, with one of the more unsurprising selections here in Nick Castellanos, whose average velocity of 82.3 miles per hour ranks second only to Arozarena in weakest arms in the outfield overall, with his max velocity of just 87.5 being the absolute slowest of anyone in the green grass. I've talked at length about Nick's fielding struggles in the past in other content, so I'll just give you a brief recap. Among all players since StatCast started tracking fielding performance, Nick is last in fielding run value at -94, last in OAA at -82, and last in runs prevented at -71. This guy is a generationally bad fielder, and his absolute pool noodle for an arm hasn't helped him to rectify this in any respect. Alright everybody, that was the slowest throwing player at every MLB position. Please leave a like and consider subscribing if you enjoyed, and be sure to comment any other videos you'd like to see me do in a similar list fashion as this. Thank you for watching, and have a great rest of your day.